St. Chronica High School was bustling that morning. Some students were busy reading in the library, others were playing games together, and there were even two first-year students running around trying to escape the wrath of their seniors after arriving late to school. In the library, two girls were chatting about someone who was engrossed in a light novel. The two first years who had been running around were eventually scolded by their seniors and punished with laps around the school. Meanwhile, Sana was walking through the hallway surrounded by a group of male students carrying the movies she had ordered. Kodaka was a transfer student at St. Chronica High School. After a month, he still hadn't made any friends. His unusual hair color led others to assume he was a delinquent, cruel, and rough. That day, Kodaka was quietly reading in the library. When he finished, he stood up, startling the other students around him. After returning the book to the shelf, he suddenly remembered that he had left his gym clothes behind, prompting him to rush back to his classroom. As he passed by two other students, they looked terrified and quickly ran off. It seemed like a common occurrence for Kodaka, and he could only sigh in response. When he arrived at his classroom door, he heard someone talking inside. Curious, Kodaka opened the door slightly to peek inside. It turned out to be Yozora, his classmate. As far as Kodaka knew, Yozora had never been seen talking or laughing with anyone. She always appeared gloomy, surrounded by an aura of sadness. Strangely enough, she wasn't holding a phone, so Kodaka was confused about who she was talking to. Yozora seemed to be chatting with someone invisible during the sunset, which oddly resembled a scene from the light novel Kodaka had just read. In that story, after discovering a mysterious girl's secret, the protagonist was drawn into a battle against supernatural beings and eventually fell in love with her. Kodaka opened the door and stepped inside, surprising Yozora. She immediately reverted to her usual quiet and distant demeanor. Seeing her return to silence, Kodaka thought she looked rather cute when she smiled. Curious, he asked if Yozora could see ghosts or something similar. Yozora flatly denied the existence of ghosts. Kodaka pointed out that he had just seen her talking to someone. Yozora nonchalantly explained that she had been talking to her air friend. Confused, Kodaka asked what she meant by that. Yozora likened it to the concept of an air guitar, except in her case, it was an air friend. Kodaka questioned if she was really having a conversation as if someone else was there. Yozora insisted that her air friend named Tomo was genuinely present. She went on to talk about their time in middle school and a trip to an amusement park, mentioning how even a handsome teacher had confessed his love to them. Skeptical, Kodaka asked how much of her story was actually true. Yozora admitted that the middle school part was real, leading Kodaka to conclude that everything else was pure fiction. He had thought the amusement park story was genuine. Yozora remarked that going to an amusement park alone wouldn't be any fun. Kodaka was puzzled. Listening to Yozora's bizarre story felt pointless, but at the same time he felt like he should do something for her. Kodaka said he was sure Yozora could make real friends if she just tried talking to people, not just her air friend, but actual friends. Yozora responded that if it were that easy, she would have done it already. Kodaka understood how she felt. He knew what it was like to be alone as a transfer student. He mentioned that he'd been at the school for a month now, so he didn't really count as the new kid anymore. Yozora argued that someone like Kodaka had no right to lecture her about making friends when he himself had been at the school for a month without making a single friend. Shigen called him a lonely guy. Kodaka wasn't about to accept that insult from someone who had an air friend. Yozora insisted that Kodaka should make fun of Tomo, claiming that Tomo was sweet, smart, athletic, popular, kind, a great conversationalist, a good listener, and someone who would never betray her. Even though Yozora recognized how strange it sounded, she admitted she had no idea how to make friends. Curious, she asked if Kodaka had any friends at his previous school. Kodaka explained that he used to have friends who promised to keep in touch by messaging him. Yozora brushed it off, calling them one-sided friends. Then, out of the blue, she suggested that Kodaka could pay someone to be his friend. Kodaka dismissed the idea as ridiculous, but Yozora elaborated, saying he could pay 1,000 yen to have someone stick by his side at school for an entire week. Kodaka laughed and said it sounded more like a contract marriage, except in this case, it would be a contract friendship. Yozora seemed to like that term, but Kodaka insisted they should try to make friends in a more normal way. Yozora recalled seeing something similar in a drama, but admitted she didn't understand how friendships worked. Did a friendship instantly form as soon as both parties agreed and acknowledged each other, even if they had only just started talking? And if they stopped talking after that, did it mean they were no longer friends? Kodaka confessed that he didn't really understand either. Yozora clarified that it wasn't like she needed a friend right away, she just didn't like being dismissed as a gloomy loner with no friends. Kodaka thought she had a point. In modern times, not having friends was seen as a bad thing. Still, he personally didn't mind being alone. For Yozora, having even a fake friend at school would be comforting, but Kodaka still hoped to find real friends. He suggested they join a club together, but Yozora immediately refused. It was already June of their second year, meaning the club members had likely formed close bonds, and joining late as a new member would be awkward. She pointed out that if a new member joined only to make friends without contributing or having any useful skills, no one would want to hang out with them. Kodaka understood. Someone like that could easily disrupt the existing dynamics of the group. Suddenly, Yozora's mood shifted, and she became excited as she remembered a particular club. Without explaining further, she quickly said goodbye and left. A month earlier, Kodaka had been in a similar position to Yozora. He, too, had an imaginary friend. It was his first day at St. Chronica High School in the city of Tuya, and he had arrived late after getting on the wrong bus. By the time he finally reached the school, he was already bracing himself for trouble. He sprinted down the hall, trying to reach his classroom as fast as he could. At that moment, Ms. Asada was giving a lecture at the front of the class. Out of breath and flustered, Kodaka burst into the room and introduced himself to her. His ragged breathing and chaotic entrance made him seem rude to the other students. To make matters worse, his blonde hair only reinforced the assumption that he was a delinquent. As Kodaka looked around the classroom, he noticed that everyone seemed afraid of him. He quickly sat down at his desk, and when he opened his bag, he realized that he had forgotten his textbook. A female student immediately slid her textbook toward him. She shifted her chair closer to the person next to her, and by that afternoon, rumors had already spread that Kodaka had stolen her textbook. Even though it had happened a month ago, Kodaka still couldn't shake it off. That evening, while he was cooking dinner, he remembered how Yozora called him by his first name. It had been a long time since anyone had called him by his first name instead of his last. The next day in class, Kodaka and Yozora studied as usual. But during the break, Yozora simply fell asleep at her desk, even while two students in front of her were chatting. She stayed asleep through it all. When class ended, Yozora suddenly invited Kodaka to come with her. The other students were surprised to see Yozora talking to Kodaka. As he followed her, Kodaka wondered why she had suddenly invited him. Yozora explained that she had submitted a proposal to create a new club. Since she couldn't fit into any existing clubs, she decided to make her own. Kodaka agreed that starting a new club meant that the relationships within it would begin from scratch. The club Yozora created was the Neighbors Club. According to her, the club was formed under the guidance of God to foster friendships and strengthen the bonds between students through sincere devotion, adapting to any situation to build character. Kodaka asked if the teachers would really approve of such nonsense. Yozora confidently explained that since the school emphasized service and devotion, anything could be justified if it was claimed to be God's will. Kodaka then asked what kind of activities the Neighbors Club would have. Yozora replied that their main activity would be to find friends and avoid the pitying looks people gave to those who had to create imaginary friends. By doing this, they could eventually find people they could call real friends. Kodaka hadn't thought about it that deeply, but he supported her and congratulated her on the idea. Yozora, however, was surprised that Kodaka was talking like an outsider, considering he was already a member of the club. It turned out that Yozora had registered Kodaka as a member without asking him. She invited him to start their first club activity. They headed to the church lounge, a room Yozora had received permission to use from their faculty advisor. Kodaka asked if their advisor could teach them how to make friends. Yozora quickly dismissed the idea, saying that their advisor, Sister Maria, also didn't have any friends. Kodaka was confused as to why Yozora would choose her as their club advisor. Yozora explained that she wasn't good at talking to people who seemed to have lots of friends. Yozora said their first goal was to recruit more members. She had already made a poster to put up on all the school bulletin boards. Kodaka, however, pointed out that the poster didn't really explain what the Neighbors Club was about. Yozora told him to read it diagonally, and when he did, he found that the poster contained a hidden message saying they were looking for friends. Kodaka thought her method was a bit over the top, but Yozora insisted that only people who genuinely wanted to make friends would be able to decipher the hidden message. As if that wasn't enough, she also drew an image inspired by a famous song depicting a person making 100 friends and eating onigiri on top of Mount Fuji. If the hidden message didn't work, Yozora believed the image would get the point across. With that settled, they began putting up their posters on the school's bulletin boards. Kodaka said he didn't want to be friends with someone so gloomy that they would actually respond to the message hidden in the poster. Yozora called Kodaka an idealist for thinking everyone has the same taste. Kodaka then said that Yozora was the real idealist. Yozora asked Kodaka to stop being so formal and just call her by her real name, Yozora. Kodaka felt awkward about calling her by her first name and asked if she had any nicknames. Yozora mentioned that she used to have one but wouldn't tell him. Kodaka was curious about why she was being so secretive. It turned out the nickname was only for her friends. Not long after, a girl became interested in the poster. Once they finished putting up the posters, they returned to the church lounge. Yozora said that the real club activities would begin tomorrow, but Kodaka wasn't sure anyone would actually join the neighbors' club. Suddenly, someone knocked on their door. Yozora said it seemed like they had already gotten a new member, which surprised Kodaka since they had just finished putting up the posters. Yozora opened the door, but as soon as she saw who it was, she quickly shut it and locked it. Kodaka was confused by her reaction, but Yozora casually suggested they start their club activities. Kodaka was bewildered, especially since the person at the door was a girl, which meant she could be a good friend for Yozora. Yozora laughed at Kodaka's comment, calling him a blonde thug. The knocking came again, and when Yozora opened the door, the girl complained about the door being locked when she wanted to join the club. Yozora immediately shut the door again, saying the girl was one of the popular kids who had no business joining their club. Kodaka wondered if Yozora already knew her. Yozora explained that the girl was Sana from class 2 to 3, the only daughter of the school's owner. She was constantly followed by a group of boys who were obsessed with her. Yozora even called her a disgusting creature with the aura of a princess. Aside from being beautiful, Sana was also athletic and academically brilliant. In fact, she had been at the top of every exam since last year. Yozora clearly dislikes Sana's popularity. Kodaka couldn't understand Yozora's way of thinking. Suddenly, Sana started banging on the window. Kodaka quickly opened it. Sana was annoyed at how Yozora had treated her, when all she wanted was to join the club. Yozora tried to shut the window again, saying she wouldn't allow Sana to join if she was just there to mock her. Sana insisted that she wasn't there to make fun of anyone. She had understood the hidden message in the poster. She knew that the club was trying to find real friends, and she admitted that she wanted friends too. Yozora finally allowed Sana to join. Sana proudly declared that she was perfect, smart, athletic, and beautiful, but to Yozora, she was just a walking milk sack. In response, Sana called Yozora a washboard because of her flat chest. The two of them began arguing over their chest sizes until Kodaka interrupted and asked if Sana really wanted to make friends. Sana confirmed that she did. Yozora pointed out that Sana was already surrounded by a bunch of boys. However, Sana dismissed them, saying she only saw them as doormats. What she really wanted were genuine friends, especially girls her age who could be her partners during cooking class or school trips. Other girls always told her to join the boys who hovered around her, which was why she was desperate to find real friends. Kodaka understood that when a girl is too pretty and popular, other girls tend to isolate her. Sana then told Kodaka to kneel down so she could step on him. Kodaka was baffled and asked why he should do that. Sana said that the boys in her class liked her, and she even suspected that maybe Kodaka wanted more than just friendship, calling him a pervert. Annoyed, Kodaka protested, saying he was not a pervert. Looking at the two of them, Kodaka commented that having the neighbors' club was a good thing since they could become friends. Upon hearing that, Yozora called Sana an object and said she would never consider her family, and Sana quickly fired back with the same sentiment. Kodaka was confused about how they could already be at each other's throats on the very first day of the neighbors' club. The two girls kept arguing, and eventually, Kodaka decided to leave the room. In his mind, he thought that the club's first official meeting with just the three of them seemed to go pretty well, all things considered. That day, Kodaka went to the neighbor's club room, where Sana was already there. Kodaka greeted her using her last name. Sana asked him to call her by her first name because she knew that Kodaka called Yozora by her first name. If he'd only used her last name, it would seem like he was closer to Yozora than to her. Kodaka complied and called her by her first name. Yozora arrived and announced that the neighbors' club activities would start that day. Kodaka asked what kind of activities she meant because, in his opinion, making friends wasn't as easy as it sounded. Yozora explained that to make friends, they needed a game. Kodaka thought that games were just for kids, but Yozora mentioned that there was a popular handheld console called the PSP. She said that the day before, when she went to a family restaurant alone, she saw 4 high school students playing a game called Monster Hunter on their PSPs. Kodaka explained that Monster Hunter was an action game where players hunt monsters in a fantasy world. Yozora added that players could cooperate with each other to hunt monsters, which she believed could strengthen their friendship since everyone had to work together. Plus, players could trade items, giving them plenty of chances to interact. Kodaka summarized it by saying that the more they practiced the game, the more items they got and the more friends they could make. When Sana tried to touch Yozora's PSP, Yozora quickly snatched it away. She declared that by Monday, all neighbors' club members had to bring their PSPs with Monster Hunter installed. On Monday, Yozora, Kodaka, and Sana gathered in the club room, each bringing their PSPs. Yozora asked if they knew how to play the game. Sana had spent some time playing and concluded that it was indeed a kid's game. Yozora then asked for Kodaka's rank. Kodaka said he was still at level 1 because he hadn't managed to defeat anything yet. Yozora proudly stated that she was at level 3, but Seina smugly revealed that she was already at level 6. Kodaka was surprised, saying that level 6 was the highest rank. Seina, feeling proud of herself, claimed that she must be naturally talented at games and called herself perfect. Curious, Kodaka asked how long Seina had actually been playing since she said it was only for a short time. Seina insisted that she hadn't played much, but Yozora immediately grabbed her PSP to check the play history. It turned out that Seina had been playing for 53 hours straight. Her in-game armor was also impressive, making Yozora call her a liar. Frustrated, Yozora tossed the PSP back to Seina, who managed to catch it in time. Yozora then pulled Seina's face closer and pointed out the dark circles under her eyes. Embarrassed, Seina quickly covered them with powder. Yozora concluded that after school on Friday, Seina had been playing the game non-stop day and night. Seina defended herself by saying that even a lion would fight to the death, and if it was for Monster Hunter, she would too. Seina then invited them to start playing again, offering to be the host and choosing an easy mission to begin with. Despite their constant bickering, Kodaka found it strange how seriously they took their club activities. The Monster Hunter game began. Seina and Yozora's characters were already prepared when Kodaka's character joined, causing both girls to stare in disbelief. Kodaka explained that his appearance was like that because he was still at level 1. However, they weren't surprised by his armor, they were shocked by the character he had chosen. Yozora even commented that Kodaka's character looked worse than his real-life appearance. Seina asked if he was obsessed with long-haired foreigners, especially since his character's name was Hawk. Kodaka defended himself, saying it was fine for his in-game appearance to be different from reality. They began their mission to defeat a mosquito monster. Yozora successfully shot an arrow at the mosquito, but out of nowhere, Seina attacked Yozora, causing her to die in the game. Seina apologized, saying her hands were a bit slippery and urged Kodaka to heal up and get back to the fight. Kodaka couldn't believe that someone at level 6 like Seina would miss her target, which made him wonder if she had intentionally leveled up just to mess with Yozora. They continued playing the game. While Seina was fishing, an arrow suddenly hit her, causing her to fall into the water. Frustrated, Seina demanded to know why Yozora did that to her. Yozora claimed she had pressed the wrong button, but Seina was convinced that Yozora had aimed at her on purpose. Just as Seina was about to retaliate, a monster appeared. Seina immediately got ready to attack it, but Yozora shot a sleep arrow at her and then set off a bomb nearby, killing both Seina and the monster. Yozora cheered, celebrating her victory, while Seina angrily asked why she did that. Yozora said she was trying to help but lost control, apologizing afterward. Seina, however, was sure Yozora had done it on purpose. Kodaka reminded them to work together seriously. Yozora promised to support Seina more in their next hunt, and Seina said she would do the same. With that, the real hunt began. Their next mission took place at a volcano. Yozora mockingly called Seina a piece of meat that shouldn't be wandering around and suggested she should be chopped up instead. Not to be outdone, Seina called Yozora a loudmouth farmer and vowed to hunt her down. As they advanced, both girls took out several monsters while also attacking each other. Meanwhile, Kodaka focused on gathering crystal stones and managed to find a dragonite ore. It became clear that Yozora and Seina were more interested in fighting each other than the actual monsters, using bombs, arrows, and swords against each other. In the chaos, Kodaka was defeated by a monster. Despite losing, he couldn't help but notice how much fun Yozora and Seina seemed to be having as they tried to take each other down. Eventually, time ran out and their mission failed. After finishing the game, Yozora admitted that playing games wasn't really a good way to strengthen friendships. Seina agreed, saying it was just a waste of time. Yozora also confessed that she didn't like modern games with multiplayer modes, wondering why she had to play with other people. Seina shared the same sentiment, questioning why she had to care about other people's feelings in a game world. Kodaka, curious, asked if they had ever cared about other people's feelings in real life. Both girls were shocked by his question, prompting Kodaka to pretend he hadn't said anything. After classes ended, Kodaka overheard two male students talking about Monster Hunter. He approached them, mentioning that he also played the game. However, the two students became scared because of Kodaka's intimidating appearance. When he asked to trade items, the frightened students complied. The next day, a rumor spread around the school that Kodaka had been extorting his classmates. That day, Seina brought a television and a PlayStation to the clubroom. Kodaka asked why she had brought such bulky items to school. Seina confidently replied that of course it was for playing games. Kodaka was puzzled as to why she had gone through so much trouble to bring a TV that big. Seina proudly announced that she had found the game far more useful than Monster Hunter. She then told Kodaka and Yozora, who she called peasants, to be grateful to her. Yozora told Sena to be quiet because her talking was ruining the taste of her coffee. Sena scolded Yozora for casually using her tea set. The game Sena brought was called Kiramiki School Life 7, which she thought was the perfect gal game for their club. Yozora agreed, saying it was good for conversation practice. Kodaka mentioned that gal games were usually for guys, and that for female players, there should be a gal game featuring handsome boys instead. Sena insisted that she wasn't looking for male friends. They decided to play the gal game. While setting up the character's name, Sena started typing her own, but Yozora insisted on using her name since she was the club president. Sena questioned when Yozora had become the club president. Kodaka suggested using his name since the game's protagonist was a boy. Both Yozora and Sena immediately rejected the idea. Kodaka then proposed that Sena use her own name since she bought the game, and Yozora finally relented. Sena praised Kodaka for being considerate toward her. Just as Sena was about to finish typing her name, Yozora suddenly snatched the device and randomly pressed buttons, resulting in the character's name being Kashiwazaki Semapaname. Sena was shocked at the weird name, but Yozora insisted that Semapaname sounded cool and suggested that Sena use it as her real name instead, claiming that hearing Sena's real name made her want to vomit. The game began with Semapaname introducing Suzuki Masaru as her best friend since middle school. This irritated Kodaka, who complained that the protagonist already had a best friend and was still trying to make more. Sena called Kodaka creepy for making such a comment. Masaru told Semapaname that hanging out with pretty girls was one of the best ways to enjoy high school. Sena thought Masaru was a bit shallow but admitted that his way of talking was appealing. She wished she could be friends with someone like him. Then, Akari introduced herself as one of Semapaname's classmates. She was a bit nervous about starting high school but felt that the people around her seemed friendly. Akari asked Semapaname if they could be good friends. The game presented 3 choices. The first 2 involved greeting her back, while the third option was to rudely reject Akari and tell her to stay away. Without hesitation, both Sena and Yozora chose the third option in unison. Kodaka was bewildered by their decision, pointing out that it was obviously the wrong choice. Sena argued that any girl who talked to a guy she didn't know on the first day of school was suspicious. Yozora added that such girls probably said the same things to every boy they met. Kodaka disagreed, saying that Akari seemed like a nice person. Yozora retorted that those types of girls were the worst. On the surface, they acted sweet and innocent, but behind the scenes, they flirted with every guy in sight. Kodaka found it hard to believe that girls like that actually existed. Yozora insisted that according to the internet, all girls these days were like that. Sena clicked the third option, rejecting Akari. Akari apologized, admitting that she might have been too forward with someone she had just met. She promised to be more careful in the future and asked Semapaname not to be mad at her. In the game, the protagonist had to improve her skills through various activities to unlock events and meet other female characters. Yozora remarked that the game world was tough. Just like real life, you couldn't meet people unless you had some skills. Sena agreed, saying she didn't want her character to be an idiot, so she immediately chose the study option. Yozora also said she didn't like dumb guys. As Semapaname continued studying, her intelligence increased, prompting Yozora to comment on how stupid she must have been before. Kodaka just smiled and said it was just a game. While at the library, Semapaname's hand accidentally touched a girl's hand. Her name was Yukiko, and she apologized. Semapaname was then faced with 2 options. The first was to give the book to Yukiko, and the second was to take the book without saying anything. Kodaka assumed Yozora and Sena would pick the second option, but surprisingly, they both chose the first. Kodaka was confused and asked why. Yozora said that rather than spending time reading books, it was better to study. Sena also mentioned that she was aiming to reach 200 intelligence points before the next exam. Sena pressed the first option, and afterward, Yukiko thanked Semapaname and introduced herself. Yukiko even complimented Semapaname's name, calling it nice. Yozora remarked that Yukiko must have a screw loose to think a name like Semapaname was nice. The screen then displayed that Semapaname could now invite Yukiko on a date. Yozora agreed that Yukiko was a better choice than that cheap Akari. As Yukiko and Semapaname went on a date, the scenes touched Sena deeply. She even commented that being loved by a girl felt amazing. Yozora admitted that Yukiko did seem like a nice person. Suddenly, when Semapaname offered to walk Yukiko home, she avoided him. Sena was confused about why Yukiko was acting that way. Kodaka explained that Yukiko was avoiding him because of how rude Semapaname had been to Akari whenever they met. He added that if a girl didn't like him, bad rumors would spread and affect how other girls viewed him. Sena concluded that Yukiko was avoiding him because Akari had been badmouthing him at school, which made her furious and want to beat Akari up. Kodaka clarified that the real issue wasn't that, but if Semaponame apologized to Akari, everything would return to normal. Seina refused to do that, and Yozora agreed, saying she would never lower her head to some foolish girl who got upset over nothing. Seina supported Yozora's stance, confidently stating that Yukiko would eventually understand it was all a misunderstanding. Semaponame tried approaching Yukiko again, but she kept avoiding him. This made Seina burst into tears, as she couldn't believe it, especially after trusting Yukiko so much. Kodaka was surprised at how emotionally invested Seina had become in the game, especially when Yozora decided to go out and find Akari to kill her. Kodaka was further shocked when Seina began crying hysterically after being ignored by Yukiko. The next day, Seina handed the Gal game to Kodaka, asking him to play it after school, especially the third-year Akari event, which had made her cry uncontrollably. Kodaka was bewildered, considering how Seina had previously called Akari a cheap and insolent girl. Seina then insisted that Kodaka should stop badmouthing Akari because she had lost her parents when she was young and had been working hard ever since. Despite her hardships, Akari filled the world with her smiles instead of hating it. Seina also urged Kodaka not to forget the story routes of Yukiko, Aino, Mio, Natsumi, Mizuki, and Karen because they were all wonderful girls. Kodaka was astonished to learn that Seina had completed all the routes right after school the previous day. She also demanded that Kodaka see all the endings, calling it a must because Karasuku was a masterpiece that everyone in the country had to play. According to her, it wasn't just a game, it was life. As soon as the bell rang, Seina hurried off to her class, but not before reminding Kodaka again to play the Gal game. The official note for the Neighbors Club was that Seina had successfully made friends with 7 two-dimensional girls.